Welcome to episode 19 of the Public Circle Live. My name is Aldous Sperl, joining MLA Adam Olsen on today's weekly show.
That's me. You said this is episode 19.
Episode 19.
So we're one away from 20.
That's true.
And there was some questions about whether or not we would have the longevity to be able to do this.
There were, raised by myself. But I've been proven wrong.
It's kind of your role, though, I think.
You know what? We've had a lot of comments about the success, or at least people tuning in and appreciating this weekly update from their MLA. So we're going to continue doing it.
You know, I think that part of the goal is, you take a look at these communication tools that we use, and you say, what kind of effectiveness is it going to have? How many people do we have come on when we're live? How many people do we have come on and watch after? I think every one of these episodes has between 500 and 1,000 people that watch them.
Not all at once.
No, that's right. And then you go in and you look, and a whole pile of those people have watched it for less than 1.3 seconds.
That's true.
So, but it's important from my perspective that we provide an opportunity and that we do it consistently and that we give an opportunity for people in the constituency to connect with me. Digitally, we provide public opportunities for people to connect, and this is just another one of those things. And we're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep providing the opportunity for this to happen, and we hope that you help encourage your friends and neighbors and family to jump on and have a conversation with us.
Yeah, and just on that note, if there is something that comes up during the show that you want to comment on, that you have a question on, just put it in the comments, and we'll try and get to it.
That's good. Well, we've got a few people watching already, so there we go.
Excellent. So today, we're just going to talk a bit about the week that happened from the perspective of mostly this constituency and the work that you've been involved with, as well as some changes that are upcoming in how our office and how our approach is going to move forward.
Yeah.
So starting off, we had a cool Tuesday morning where we got to tour the Saanich Raven, one of the new BC Ferries class. And, what were your impressions of that, Adam?
Well, I think the first thing that's to point out about BC Ferries is that there's like 34 ships and 17 different classes of ship within the BC Ferries operation, which obviously that, as it was pointed out to us, that's 2 ferries per class, and that's not the kind of operation that you want. It's something that's evolved over time. And so the goal and we had the opportunity to hang out with Mark Wilson, and he's got this big long title, but basically it's community relations and as well he manages the fleet.
That's true, and also strategy, where the fleet is going.
That's right. So he's got a very tiny portfolio.
Just tiny, yeah.
Anyway, he gave us the morning, and it was wonderful to have the opportunity to connect with Mark and have the conversation. And the goal, basically what he told us was that they're going from 17 classes of ship to hopefully 3 classes.
5.
5 classes?
5 classes. Yeah.
So, but there will be 3 main classes. There will be the class that runs like the Spirit class and then the Coastal class. Those are the big ones that you see on the route between Tsawwassen and Swartz Bay, Horseshoe Bay, Departure Bay, and like Nanaimo. And then there's the Saanich class, which is the class that we toured on. And then there's going to be the new Island class, which is an open-end double-end boat that's much smaller and is going to service some of the islands. So we got a tour of the Saanich class, and the Saanich Raven is a beautiful boat. It's a phenomenal boat, and we got basically from the lowest deck to the highest deck, and we got to see where the future of BC Ferries is going.
And now for our constituents who will use the Saanich class, this is the class, the vessel that's going to go between the Gulf Islands, primarily all the milk run, and from Saturna to Galliano to Maine to Pender, stopping at Long Harbor and Salt Spring. This is going to be one of your main ferries right now. And what's really neat about it is 2 things, I think. Well, maybe 3 things. 1, it's fuel.
Right.
Operates on LNG and diesel if the LNG isn't there.
Right.
And what that does is it creates the energy to power the propulsion system. That might seem obvious, but the propulsion system and how the whole ferry operates is actually electric.
That's right.
So in the future, in theory, if the battery power is there or the technology is there, these ships could operate fully electric, that was mind-blowing to me.
So one of the things that people are obviously going to say is LNG. How can you be like LNG? The fact is that these boats burn gas burn natural. Put it this way: it burns at a much higher temperature, and there's far less particulate matter in the burning of LNG. Now, the production of LNG, the production of natural gas, of methane, it's a very destructive hydrocarbon. It's a greenhouse gas. It pollutes. There's no question about it. And the full life cycle, if BC Ferries takes a look at it at a very narrow, we're going to burn it kind of perspective, it's much cleaner than diesel. No question about it. And I think what's important to point out here is that BC Ferries is taking steps. BC Ferries is taking steps towards cleaning up the emissions at their stack, at the tailpipe, basically, recognizing the fact that there are increasing emissions. Now, this is just one step, and I was on the CBC and in the CBC, and I was critical as we see other ferry services near and far start to move towards electric. And I had a conversation with BC Ferries about this, and they gave me the opportunity to have the conversation, and gave us the opportunity to have the conversation. And so I'll say this: I think that BC Ferries is taking some very important steps towards an electric fleet in the future. If not a full electric fleet, a hybrid electric fleet. So diesel, electric. Now,
and we know that's going to be the case with the new Island class. They are going to be diesel and electric.
That's right. And it's very easy for me to go on air and say, I think that they need to, match what other jurisdictions or what other ferry companies are doing, and we need to be leaders in electric, in going to all electric. The complexity, of course, lies in how do we service those electric boats? Do we have the power supply that's necessary on shore at all of those places at which the ferries land to be able to provide charging infrastructure? Is it necessarily the most efficient? So basically, I think that the situation that we have at BC Ferries is this step-by-step evolution. They've definitely got it on the top of their radar, and the new ferries that they're building have the capacity to transition from what they are to what they might need to be in the future. Recognizing, of course, that the Island class are going to be, when they're in port, are going to be able to just run off of electric battery power, meaning that their emissions in port is going to be far less. Now, can we clean up the whole route, the whole travel? That's, I think, the goal in the future is to go that way, and BC Ferries is taking steps to get there.
Yeah, and something else that our constituents might care about in Saanich North and the Islands is the new Saanich class. Two things about it. One, the wake, far less from what we saw and from what we were told. It doesn't produce the same waves that previous boats have. So that hopefully will solve some concerns around erosion. We'll see if that is the case in the future, but that was something to note.
So we've heard a lot about the waves that are created by the coastal class and by the Spirit class, the big boats that go through active pass. BC Ferries definitely took into consideration the other sources of pollution, not just the GHG emissions or the particulate matter that they're putting into the environment, but also the sound, the noise that's being created, and admit straight out that the levels of noise that are emitted underwater by this is not acceptable, and they're working towards making sure that they can reduce it in the way that the propulsion systems and everything. So I think that what's important to point out is that these are incredibly important for the economic and social viability of our coast. It's an unbelievably important service to the riding of Saanich North and the Islands, and as we go up the coast in connecting coastal communities with the rest of the province. It is a source of contention always, and just as the MLA in Saanich North and the Islands, and in the other part of my job in the legislature as the critic for transportation, for our caucus, I think it's important that I continue to build that relationship with BC Ferries, continue to provide these updates. I note the fact that we were on the Saanich class and not everything was working. So as we iron out the wrinkles, we couldn't get through a door, right? And there's lots of criticism about the stairs, the elevators, the doors, all of this that we've heard from constituents. We've heard that. We brought it up with Mark, and admittedly, these first of class vessels are going to have some wrinkles that need to be ironed out, and in future boats will have these issues dealt with.
And Minor Johnson, we see your comment there, and we experience the same thing with the doors. We hear you loud and clear. And to Adam's point, they're first in class. There are going to be some issues, but our experience was pretty good overall, I think.
So, look, I think, as Mina says, that the Saanich Raven is ridiculous in many ways. Point taken. The flip side of that is that they're really good in many ways as well. And I think that what's important is, as these new vessels come on, and as people who live, spend a lot of time, I respect the fact, Mina, that you and many Gulf Islanders that use the ferries, that rely on the ferries, these are your ferries. This is your transportation option. And adapting to the new ferries has not been and is not the same thing with the Spirit class. It took us a while to embrace the Spirit class. It took us a while to embrace the Coastal class. It's going to take a while for those ferries to be our ferries or your ferries. The reality is that in many ways those ferries are a big step and a big improvement to the ferries of the past, and they're going to allow more flexibility in the system to improve the service. Especially as they start to add more of those ferries to the service. So I think, this is not like I just take everything that we heard from BC Ferries and not challenge. We challenged. We've heard a lot of both positive and negative feedback from the constituents in Saanich North and the Islands, and people need to know that we are passing that along, and that we're not just taking what they say and just accepting it. We are pushing back and demanding that the ferry service be as best as it possibly can, and then being an advocate at the provincial government level. So, and
Sonia, a good comment there on passenger ferries. I mean, passenger ferries is a conversation we've had a lot about. Maybe you can speak a bit about the potential for passenger ferries.
Yeah, so there's a ton of conversation going on, both all over the spectrum on passenger ferries. The fact that the Saanich Inlet is not connected by passenger ferries already is kind of crazy. That the Cowichan Valley and the Saanich Peninsula, other jurisdictions around the world that are as developed and as integrated as we are, would have long had passenger ferry service already involved. So I think that we do need to start to view our ferries as more than just the provincial highway. We also need to view them as the transit option for people, and I think that's what a passenger ferry would be, is a transit option. So the conversation about transportation in our province, I dealt with the ride hailing last week. I dealt with the mobility pricing in interviews this week, talk about BC Ferries. Really what we need in this province is a fully integrated transportation plan, and not one that's like this tiny little 4-year plan that will help a political party get elected. What we need is a long-term vision, and then funding formulas and funding sources that can invest in that. We need to take transportation planning and implementation and execution out of the hands of politicians. It needs to happen because that's what our society and that's what our communities need. And we can no longer be allowed as politicians to leverage transportation infrastructure and transportation planning at election time for our own political benefit. It's so irresponsible. It's time for that to end, and it's time for the provincial government to step up and talk about transportation. To just take a look at the ENN. Why are we having a conversation about the ENN in its own context without the context of a conversation about a passenger ferry service between Royal Bay and Esquimalt and Victoria, a passenger ferry service connecting the Saanich Inlet? Like, this is a fully integrated discussion that needs to happen here on the southern Vancouver Island, the Gulf Islands, and in the Lower Mainland and right across the province, and we're not having it. We need to have it, and it will be one of the main focuses of my work in the legislature, but also here in the constituency, and we'll be talking a lot more about it on the Public Circle Live, I'm certain, in the future.
Long-term planning. I think we can all agree that's necessary on a whole bunch of fronts.
But no more than, I think, than in transportation, because it's such expensive infrastructure. It requires us to have long-term thinking about it.
Totally. So we're just going to switch sides here a bit and go to something else that we heard loud and clear this week. And that is not great news on the healthcare front in our riding. No. We have a medical clinic in Sidney that is closing its doors.
Is it called Allied?
Associated
Physicians.
Yeah. And they're closing their doors at the end of August. And so all those patients out there who are looking for a doctor, we know about the issue.
We've heard a lot about it. I think that aside from the closure of the Associated Physicians Clinic, not only did they operate a walk-in clinic, but they also had their own sort of portfolio of patients that they dealt with on a regular basis. Those were the family doctors. But we've been hearing about the challenges of accessing a primary care physician or a family doctor.
Particularly on Salt Spring and the Gulf Islands. But now it's becoming, and on the Saanich Peninsula, but it just got a bit worse.
Well, it got a lot worse, actually. So my understanding is that some of the physicians are going to be moving to another practice. They're going to be moving their practice. There's also retirements that are happening. When Aldous says it's not great news, it's really not great news. The reality is that we were short before, and we're going to be more short now. That because we're actually going to lose a doctor,
and we're going to lose the walk-in clinic, which a lot of people
clinic.
Have relied on. If you don't have a family doctor.
So, I guess from a provincial government perspective, there is some desire and some movement forward on this. So there is some positive. The government's moving towards primary care networks.
Focus on team-based care.
That's right. Bringing health practitioners together under one roof. There's no question that there's challenges to that, and there's no question that everybody must be part of the solution. There have been, I've been a part of some very, very frustrating conversations about this very situation, and there's always a solution looking for a problem. I find in this situation, it's always like the focus is always on why something can't be done, and I really think that needs to change. I really think that the people that are in the administrative levels at the health authority, at the very, within the various unions, within the various organizations that represent the healthcare practitioners, they need to recognize, I think, that yes, the interests of their clients or the interests of those that they represent are important to be represented, but the interests of the patient need to be represented as well. And right now, the situation that we have, we can't have, well, that's the way it is. That's the way it's always been. That's the way it's always going to be. We can't continue along with this, a solution looking for a problem. What I mean by that is that it's like we put a solution out there that we're going to create these primary health networks, and then it seems like everybody is looking around finding the reasons why it can't happen. And I think that needs to stop. We need to start looking towards how we can make it happen and how every single member and every single practitioner can be a positive influence in how that can happen. We spend half of our provincial budget on healthcare. The fact that we are in the situation that we're in right now, frankly, I believe is it's unfortunate, but it's also irresponsible. Well, not irresponsible. It's not acceptable. I'll just leave it at that. It's not acceptable. When we spend and invest so much in our healthcare, to have so many people in our community and more people in our community now than last week without a family doctor, that's unacceptable. And it needs to be solved. And every single aspect of this system needs to be part of the solution.
So for everyone out there who is looking for a family doctor and frustrated by the healthcare options in your area, we've heard you, and we're going to keep advocating for change.
Yeah, and try to do it with a smile on our face. And I can tell you it's not going to be easy.
So now we're going to switch a bit in the last sort of segment of this Public Circle Live to a reflection on what we've done here in the constituency office and what we've learned and some of the steps we've taken over the last year and almost 2 months?
It's been a while.
Yeah.
A year and 14, 15 months.
So, and the thing about when you get elected and when you open up a new office, and you can speak to this, Adam, is there's no playbook. There's no guide on what you're supposed to do or how you're supposed to do it. There's no measure of what you do to be successful or not. And one of the big things that you always told me was you wanted to be a constituency-centered office. You wanted to provide excellent customer service as best as we can and to incorporate the elements of democracy into what we do as best as we can.
Community at the center.
Community at the center.
And that wasn't something that I came up with. That's something, and we'll talk about how that came up. But the Public Circle Live, the Public Circle in and of itself, the community dialogues, the town halls. One of the things that I said early on, because I come from a customer service, a tourism background, was every email that we get, I want us to at least respond to it within 24 or 48 hours. Maybe not even an answer, but I would like for us to acknowledge the fact that we have that email come in and that we're looking into it on behalf of the constituent. And that we're looking into the industry. I really wanted to have a constituent-focused constituency office.
Yeah, and it's not just the services that you were focused on providing, but it's in the timely manner in getting back to people, but it's also creating new ways for people to engage with their provincial democracy and you as their elected representative. Some of those ways include the public circle, the concept being it's a circle, everyone participates, everyone has a voice, and we've held public circle dialogues, community dialogues is what we call them, here on various topics throughout the previous year. Some of them have been very well attended, some of them have not been so well attended. Town halls, the usual email newsletters, letting you know what's going on and what Adam's been working on. But website and trying new technologies like PlaySpeak, this weekly service is the Public Circle Live, trying to really foster engagement in your provincial democracy, in your provincial government, your elected leader.
Connectivity, building community, building resilient, being a part of building resilient community. I don't have the benefit of looking at, just Salt Spring or just Pender or just Sidney or just Sartlip First Nation. All of those communities are part of a bigger riding that I see. From 30,000 feet, there's no borders. No matter what, if I'm on one of the Gulf Islands, I say this is a unique community. Yeah, you're unique, but you're uniquely part of Saanich North and the islands, and this is part of a territory that's always worked together. And so, the islands and the peninsula have always been an important part of a whole. And so, the goal that I wanted to do with this was to bring together the community as best as I possibly can. And I can say that we've been both. I think there's been some successes, and I think that there's been some failures. And, we often stop and pat ourselves on the back a lot about the successes, and very irregularly do we stop and take a look at our failures. And one of the things that we've done recently was we put it out there to partner with one of the local post-secondary institutions. We put it out to all the post-secondary institutions to see if they would want to work with us to help us evaluate and provide us advice on how to do the community outreach, the public engagement part better. And we had one that stepped up, and they've stepped up big time. Yeah. Aldous has been working with Royal Roads. Tell them about that.
Yeah, so I think this was your idea originally to reach out to post-secondary institutions. They do leadership studies, they do political science courses, they do engagement, they do communications. And what better avenue to partner with leading edge universities or leading edge groups that have the best science, that have the best research, that are interested in having a laboratory to test things out. And that's what we provided. So what we did is we worked with a few of their classes, 3 different groups of students. One that was a communications focus, and they did some projects on things that we wanted to engage the community with, transportation, how to engage with your elected representative, that sort of thing. We did another MLA forum where there's an opportunity for your constituents to come and talk about a whole variety of issues about what was important to you. And then we'd get a report from that. The students would get a chance to engage and do on-the-ground research on what was important and how people engaged with their elected representative. And then the third group we had did an audit of what we were doing. And I think that was super, super helpful to us.
Yeah, so we've taken basically, and we got some communications planning advice on how to move forward. And very quickly, a couple of things that we're going to be doing and that we've learned from this process is we're going to be splitting our website in half, basically, recognizing the fact that I kind of live these, it's like Jekyll and Hyde sort of. On one hand, I've got to be the whip and the spokesperson on a number of files for the BC Green Caucus, and I'm proud to be in the legislature to represent the community that I'm representing and to represent the values and the party that I represent. And that is my role in the legislature. But I also have to operate a nonpartisan constituency office that needs to be separate. It needs to be, less BC Green Caucusy than it's been.
And less focused on you than it's
That's
been.
right. This is about community. This is about putting the community at the center. That's what the original vision always was to engage. And so we've taken the advice, and we've started to build a website for the Saanich North and the Islands Constituency. You can look forward to that. It's going to have a handful of things, a way for you to book appointments with us, to contact your office, to connect with the events of the public circle as we do that community engagement.
And not just what we're doing, but what the community is doing.
That's
finding
right.
out what's going on, finding out who some really cool actors in the community are and the change they're having.
That's right.
We want to profile some really great change makers, and we think we need to use what we can to show what's great in this community as much as we can.
That's right. So there's a lot of work ahead to improve the communications and to improve the operations of our constituency. But I wanted to be very clear that we're not happy with where we're at. We're only happy with where we're at if we're continually trying to improve.
Yeah.
And improvement is the most important thing for us. We want to do what we've done well better, and we want to fix the things that we haven't done so well. And that's why we continue to work, and we will continue to work with Royal Roads. And seemingly, they're continuing to be excited to work with us. So that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. And for anyone who's watching this, if you have ideas on how we can be better serviced or how you can be better serviced by what we do, if you have ideas on what the website should look like or how our newsletter should operate, if you have ideas on how we can do this show better or how we can engage and provide you more answers in a quicker time frame, we'd love to hear them.
Absolutely. So we've got 1 minute left.
Yeah.
We committed to 30 minutes. We're at 29. So let's get through this really quickly.
Well,
next week,
yeah.
I'm going to be at Thursday night Sidney Market. We're going to have a table set up. Thank you for the folks at Sidney Market for letting us set up. Come by and visit. Actually, the next 3 weeks, starting next Thursday, I'll be at the Sidney Market.
Yeah, just
Come by,
down
say
under
hello.
the breezeways, so just off
right.
to the side, there'll be a little sign.
At the bottom end of Beacon Avenue, right below our office, actually. So please do come by and visit us. Leave a comment, leave a message, connect with us. This is how you can get a hold of us. You can email me at adam.olsen.mla@ledge.bc.ca. You can call our office, 250-655-5600. Our office is open from 10 till 4, Monday through Friday. And check out the website that is changing, but this will never change. You can visit it at adamolsen.ca, and eventually you'll see it. It will take you off in a couple of different directions. I'll jump on board here and answer some of the comments that have been made that we weren't able to get to today.
Perfect. Adam, always a pleasure. And thank you, everyone who's watched the Public Circle Live. Episode 19. Stay tuned for episode 20.
Next week, 4:30, Friday. Invite your friends, family to join us. So until then, as we always say, Haegwa.